take it from me, you always wait till it goes off deep inside your brain. I'm in control, I have so much to gain. Don't even know you, but I wanna show you how nice it is. I don't even know you, but I wanna show you how nice it is. You can rely solely on yourself. Others can talk, they will try to help. Gracious and free, that's how you ought to live. Taking each step, try and just forgive. Don't even know you, but I wanna show you how nice it is. I don't even know you, but I wanna show you how nice it is. And if you were waiting for something amazing, well, baby, here it is. Don't even know you, but I wanna show you how nice it is. Don't even know you, but I wanna show you how nice it is. I don't even know you, but I wanna show you how nice it is. If you were waiting for something amazing, well, baby, here it is. I don't even know you, but I wanna show you how nice it is.
Window shopper going out tonight. Taste expensive credit flatline. You keep picking me up and I put me on hold. As quiet, taking me up the rack so no one else can find. Say you want me but need more time. Oh, I water flowers without sunshine. We ain't growing enough, and I
Once upon a younger time, yours was the first hand held in mine own vows. Behind the fence, our lips met, so innocent. Ran in with cheeks ablaze straight to my room. Didn't wanna face anyone. Had a secret underneath my bed at the back. That's where I carved your name. I carved your name, carved your name. Many years and we had spread through the world, bound only by the thread of memory. Saw you more one summer back, said you were married and living in Fort Mac. Settled down in a photo she had of you two. In the sand you had carved your name. You carved your name, carved your name. Heard the news through a friend, there was no pain near the end. Oh, wish I had one last chance to hold your hand, share a laugh. My first kiss. When I was home, I found the plot and the stone where they had carved your name. They carved your name, carved your name. They carved your name, carved your name. They carved your name.
Voices in my head, I feel like I don't fit in. Wonder
Definitely not.
Really not. No,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be. We really. I mean, as artists, I believe everyone. You know, I just can't talk from my own experience, but I'm absolutely affected by what I see where I am, the community I am immersed, or the community I'm able to build with in the place I am. I was doing something very different in terms of form and explorations when I was in Mexico. It was much more photographic work, and I was already doing photographic collage, but it was photographic. It was beyond, nothing beyond photography. And when I traveled to India, I traveled the first time. I traveled for a full year outside of Mexico, and 9 of those months were in India. So it was a very long time immersed in that country. I was questioning, am I going to continue photographing, or I'm just going to to do something different. I found photography was a way for me to relate to the world and to relate to my inner universe as well. So it was a bridge. And so for me, it took a different meaning that originally had. When I came to Canada, one of the things that struck me was the light. I was at a residency at Emma Lake, Canderdine campus. I was super lucky to be there in 2006. And I remember being at 10 p.m. and I was looking through the trees and I was asking, what is that thing behind the trees? And people was like, what do you talk about, right? Yes, that glow. What is that glow? You know, that light. Well, it's the sun, right? Obviously. Like, obviously, I never saw that at 10 p.m., a glow on the sky. And that had a strong influence for me to start doing some explorations with light devices and landscape and how I could see myself in this landscape, right? So at every step, I feel that where I am, it's having a strong influence on me. Yeah.
So curiosity, landscape, place, all of that is sort of where you draw your inspiration from. Are you the type of artist where if you've got a project or you've got a deadline, a gallery show type of thing, that you sort of sit back and develop a premise for the show? Or is it those moments, like that moment when you're looking at the sky, that you just go, this is what I need to capture something of, some essence of this emotion, this feeling, this thing that's happening around me that's so spectacular? Is that where the project starts, the idea starts, or is there sort of, are you in the studio a little bit more formally with your coffee going, okay, I need to do this, and I need this many photographs for this gallery space? Tell us just a little bit about that making process.
Yeah, I think it's the other way you describe it. Like, I am the type of artist that I come to an encounter, for example, the quality of light in Saskatchewan, right? Or something amazing like the structure of a plant, you know, that, oh my God, like I cannot get over it, you know. And that stays with me so strongly, and that's kind of what ignites for me a whole project in a way, you know. I want to look closer, I want to follow that thread, you know. And it's like kind of an emotion that I have, and I bet while I'm talking about that, you might feel it, because I just feel like, oh my God, this is amazing, you know. And then it just stays with me and just triggers a lot of other things, you know. So it almost goes like a cascade of things, you know. And in a way, I feel like just going with it, you know. I'm carrying the emotion, I'm carrying that event in a way, but at the same time, I'm just going with it too, you know. I'm not the type of artist that can be in the studio and be very like planning and pre-visualizing what is going to happen and how it's going to look. I'm more the artist that I'm following and discovering on the way and trying to kind of put it together to a point where I'm feeling it's coming back to a place where it makes sense in the world. It's for a long time, it's in between the world and me, you know, and then it comes back to the world. It's kind of that.
Is it almost like it gets to a point where you feel like it can live on its own without you? And you're like, I've put enough into it, and now it's... Because I'm curious when you're talking about... I work the same way, where it's sort of this call and response between the art and the ideas, and you sort of follow that emotion or that insight. But then sometimes it's hard to tell when the piece is finished. Yes. And so do you sort of have this ability to know when it's like, okay, this is finished because it's saying everything I needed to say, or I feel like that emotion is there? Or do you just get to a point where you're like, I've tapped out, I've put everything I can into this, it needs to now be in conversation with other people? How do you feel about like finishing work and putting it up on the walls?
Yes, I think that is, it's been a process of learning, like when to leave the work, you know. I mean, sometimes I guess everybody knows that you can overdo it, you know, and overcook things and whatnot. But it's part of what you need to do in order to at another moment realize, okay, I'm here. It comes to the point where the work is itself, and along the way, it goes in its own way many times, you know. You propose an accident, so to speak, you know, you propose a lead, but then at some point it goes in its own way, takes its own form and its own pace as well. And yes, at some point you just have to step, and yes, has its own life. Sometimes when I come back to works that I have left sitting for a while, that I need to do sometimes, or works that I have finished and then are not in my hands anymore, and then I come back and see them, and if I have this sensation, I still enjoy it, right? I still like what I'm seeing. You know, I feel very fortunate in a way, you know, because I feel the work is, although individual work is done, you never feel it's done.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
you definitely don't. And I think many of us come back to art years later, to our own art, and suddenly go, oh, I see it completely differently now because of these other lived experiences that we can now bring to the piece too sometimes. When you were talking about that wonder, though, I'm there with you in the field with the trees and the light, because I've seen that before, where it's like the moon's coming up over here, but the sun's still going down, and there's this incredible light. Those moments of wonder, though, do you ever struggle in times where just life itself and the everyday kind of gets in the way of those, and, you know, like the struggles that we all have as human beings kind of shuts you off from seeing all of those beautiful moments that are what's inspiring in your work? Do you ever struggle to get there and have breaks where you're emotionally exhausted and over here doing something else? And how do you bring yourself back to seeing all of that wonder? Or maybe you're always there, and that's beautiful.
And yeah, I think it's a great question, because I don't think we are in one place all the time, right? And as human beings, we have a fluctuation of emotions and days that are filled with duties that are not really your choice or your want, you know? And there are days where you have the space and the freedom to go and explore in you know, your curiosity. So how do I travel between those places? I think it's I mean, there's an intention certainly that has to prevail for me, that is about there's kind of an intention with the work, and kind of a leaf that the work has. Sometimes I have to leave it because I have other things to attend in life. And it's almost like an itch, you know? It's almost like, okay, it's there. And you feel kind of this uncomfortable place where you want to go there. You want to go to your studio. You want to go and photograph. You want to follow that. But you cannot be all the time there, you know? And artists, we just juggle with a lot of things in order to have a practice, you know, to have a life that allows your practice to exist. You have to do other things as well, you know? Mm-hmm. And so sometimes you feel away from that place. But in a way, it's also a part of acceptance, you know? Not that sometimes I just have the need to go back because you can just not, you don't feel well, really. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you just have to kind of have a bit of the discipline and make that space to go to those places where you refill the fuel for that mood, for that appreciation. It's a bit of an exercise, and I think it's an exercise in which I purposely want. I think I feel very fortunate. My work allows me to tune in, and part of my work is to tune in a way, you know. So I feel like I'm very fortunate to, in a way, to choose that, you know. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So studio-wise, where are you working right now?
Well, I have a wonderful studio here in Saskatoon. I was without a permanent studio for a few years, a couple of years, and I was fortunate enough to have residencies at AKA, Paved Arts, to use the studio of friends like in Lumsden, etc. And just recently this year I started renting a garage from a good friend, Dee Lowe, who's here. And she used the studio before, and now her house is her own studio, so the garage was not really in use. So now we transformed it again and made it into my studio. So it's a new space, still recent for me, but I feel that I could kind of put my luggage down again, and energetically and kind of mentally and everything, it just feels so right. You know, it feels absolutely amazing. Yeah.
I think that's one of the challenges as being artists that we don't always talk about, is sometimes we don't have the studios to make what we need, and the ideas get limited by what we can access and stuff. So you're working in the studio by yourself. I mean, Dee's in the house, but you're pretty much working solo. Is that the way you prefer to work, or do you like experiences like residencies where there's that community there and there's that constant other people checking in on the work, or other people asking you about the work, and you maybe having to like put things into words before you would have normally? What's sort of the environment that you prefer to work in?
Yes, I certainly like having a personal environment where I am with myself, you know, and but I'm also used to work with others around, and I like that too, you know. So from time to time, if I can have access to that, I'm pretty happy, you know, through residencies, or sometimes, you know, sometimes I invite a friend to put her easel in my studio, and she paints, and I just do whatever I have to do, and we're both in silence, but you have the presence of another person. Yes, I think both things are important for me. Yeah.
Residencies are definitely one that I think, I mean, they become these little incubators of different things. Is there any places that you've gone where the residency was so impactful to the work?
Yes, my first residency in Canada was the Banff Center. That's the first time I came to Canada was because I had a residency here for 2 months with, you know, Mexican FONCA, the Mexican Art Council, so to speak. I came to residency, and it was probably the first time I felt really an artist. They would treat me as an artist, and kind of a very special artist. You know, I had this card where you scan and you eat, and you scan and you go to the gym, and you scan and you swim. So I was not using money even, you know, everything was like through my card, and it was a really nice situation in this amazing environment of Banff. And among many artists, we were like probably, I don't know how many Mexican artists were there at the time, maybe 10, but there were artists from everywhere in the world. And not only artists, but mathematicians and, you know, scientists or other type of people. So it was very, very impactful, because the space, the feedback, the possibility of developing your work in an uninterrupted time, you know, and have the freedom to explore and to have fun. It was absolutely essential for me at that stage, you know, of my career. Yeah, that certainly has been a highlight. Residency in India, I did a Kochi, Kerala in India, through Kashi Gallery. There was an open call, I applied, and I went to this residency, which was in a total different setting, you know. It was, I had a space, and I could go and photograph, but it was not these amazing facilities that they have in Banff. It was more like kind of finding my place in the city, dealing with the ants and the heat, and you know, and all the different things that are there. But certainly that also changed the way I work, you know, and relating to people in a different way. Yeah, having several residencies that I think every residency that I've been is has a highlight and is important in some way, you know. I think so.
Yeah. So I want to jump back to something you said when you were describing the residency in Banff about how it's just like, oh, they were treating me like I was this artist. Yeah. And I think that that's so pervasive within the arts that there is a lot of self-doubt. There's a lot of imposter syndrome. There's a lot of artists who don't claim that title until it's like fully bestowed upon them. Do you claim that title of artist now?
Oh yes.
Good.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, but but it's true. It takes a while, you know. Like there's a time when you are saying, I am a right, and then you cannot say I'm an artist until you really feel you're an artist. And for me, it was like that until I felt okay. I've done enough to prove myself. I'm an artist, right? In a way, I didn't went to art school. I went to school of communication art, like graphic arts and design. So it was not something that I assumed from the very beginning. Okay, I have my bachelor's in art and I'm an artist, right? And I think it's okay, you know. It's okay because for me it was a process for me to really own it. You know, and then I felt, yes, I absolutely own it. But yeah, there's a time where you feel like, oh, you know,
yeah. No, I definitely see that. So sorry, you're taking me on all these tangents, and I have this whole page full of questions. How are we doing for time, Jess? We're doing okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice for folks who are struggling, even when whether it's with imposter syndrome or if it's within a project, right? Because I mean, I think we all still, even though you're owning the artist and I got this and you know what you're doing and you've had all of these successes, how do you still deal with failures within the studio? And how do you how do you pull yourself back up from those kinds of moments? Because it's not like now we're an artist and now everything we touch is gold, if only, but it's not. And so what are some of the, when you get to those points of struggle, is there sort of a reason why you sort of see them, a pattern of what comes back, or is, technical or something like that? Or is it just, I'm curious.
Yes, well, there are different things. For example, technical things, which are very real, you envision something and technically you feel unable to do it. It happens to me many times because I sometimes imagine too much, and takes me sometimes years to come to what I imagine one day, right? I don't have the skills or whatever, right? So I don't know. I think I tend to hold on the idea. I tend to hold, like when I was talking about what inspires my work, what triggers, like me doing this. I think that's more the most powerful. Kind of the most powerful element in the practice, when you have that desire or that curiosity or something mesmerizes you that much to want to investigate more of it, So I think that's where I go back whenever I feel, oh, this is not working, I think sometimes some things don't work in the way you thought they were going to work, technically speaking, for example, and but if you go back to that place where you think there's a possibility, this is what you envision, and I feel it, because I feel it is possible. What I feel it is there, exists. In a way, the work exists in, let's say, is almost like in a DNA, before it really exists out there. So technical things, I've learned to ask for help. I've learned to ask for help to others that know better in areas, to talk about my work with friends, which is important to have that connection with others and to also generate community, not only come to a community, but also generate community by, by being part of what others are doing, by being a little bit permeable, So that's important that we have that community and that communication with other artists and with, friends or whatever. Come back to where you feel is the strength of your intention for your work. And I think that applies for technical things, but also applies for other things, you know, for conceptual things, or for feeling, oh, what am I doing? Like, who, you know. Sometimes it's kind of interesting. It happens to me. The other day I was like, oh my God, like, who's this crazy person? It's you know, like, I'm super tired. It's 8 p.m. I'm carrying these things super heavy, and I still have to pack that other thing, you know. What type of person am I, you know, like, working this hard and doing this thing? And then suddenly, you know, a friend calls me, you know, and then my friend is doing exactly the same in the other end, you know. Oh my God, we met, and oh my God, this is so good to feel somebody's normal here, right? so that's the importance of having your community and the peers and your friends that are like, you know, like similar souls, right, or similar, you know, minds.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one thing that many folks don't understand is that it's not this idealistic, I'm in the studio all the time and that's where being an artist starts and finishes. It's the packing and the shipping and the accounting and all of those other things that get drawn into that. And having that balance is not very easy. Do you struggle with creating that balance? Do you have like a rigidity that you're just like, no, this is my studio time and nothing messes with that? Or is it, yeah, it's late nights going, well, it's got to get done?
Yes, well, the balance always is a struggle. I guess a lot of the times, yes, I have a deadline, I have time, and then that sets the tone for sure, right? And sometimes within that, I have the freedom to step back and just to do exactly nothing. I mean, nothing, and sometimes the mind tells me, oh, you should be doing this. But I've learned, and also I've learned that to build up a muscle and to have a momentum and to make a movement, you need to step back and take the breath and take the time and clear the hard drive, you know, to go again, you know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a balance, but in my case, it's not a balance of being rigid. It's the opposite. It's almost like learning and reading, pretty organic, I would say, the way I feel that, and I try to be responsible and not to drift too much into, oh, it's so good in here, right? You know, but sometimes I question, like, I'm just being lazy, or I just need this time, you know? Sometimes you just need the time and the breath and the space.
I agree. Yeah, artists often feel like they're being lazy, but there's something about, I think, especially when you're talking about this curiosity about the world and what you're looking for in these moments of wonder, to be so distracted with everything else that's going on in life, it's hard to see those moments. It's hard to take that walk and actually see what's around you and stuff. So finding those moments and having those meditative spaces must be really important to you.
Yeah, I think so. Because part of my work is to observe. Part of my work is to walk in nature and observe, and then after I feel it, okay, to photograph, you know. So part of that. So it's honestly, it's a pretty nice situation when I need to rest in a way. I can rest in another aspect of the work. I never feel I'm not working in a way, you know, but it doesn't mean the same. The work doesn't mean the same for me than for another person, perhaps, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So can we talk about how you define success as an artist? Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of, it could, for some people, it's this financial success. For a lot of artists, it's not. What would be your main thing that you would define as success? Is it being able to sustain yourself financially? Is it something about the communication you get across with your audience and what they see in the work?
Well, I guess, yes, I guess for every artist must be different. For me, it's a combination of things. Like success is in fact, the word success is a very tricky word. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a very tricky word because it seems that success is like, okay, check, that's it, you know? And it's never check, that's it. Yeah. It's never checked, that it's never done, it's never, you know, you resolve all your problems, you know, you won the lottery or you exhibit here or there, you know. I don't think there's this kind of this idea of success or the word itself is loaded in a way that might read incorrectly. So, but I would say that depending, but for me, one of the things that is important that I'm able to do my practice, that I'm able to work as an artist and continue working as an artist. For me, that's amazing, frankly, you know, because it's such a difficult career, you know, and there are so many things that are involved for people to be able to do that, you know. And we do different trades. Some people teach, some people do administrative work, some artists are like octopus, like different arms, and like I'm amazed, like how many things you can do, right? I have my bunch too, you know, but basically finding the balance to things to serve your main interest, you know, that you don't drift too far away from that place that you are going, you know, is probably the most important thing. And I think probably if you find that balance, for me, that would be closer to success, you know? And that means many things. That means financially, might means space, that means the work is seen, that means the connection of the work with the public or with different people. That means a lot of things, you know, the community that generates, you know, around the world, their work. It's, I think an art career is not easy, but it's a very rich profession, I think. And the more of those little elements or big elements are close by, you feel more fortunate. Fortunate, I could say.
Fortunate, I like that. Are you fortunate rather than successful? I like that. Can you tell us an example of a time when, because your work is sort of this reflection of things that you're seeing and this reinterpretation and making real this emotion or whatever through this photograph. Has there ever been a time when your audience has echoed back to you something in the work that you did not intend and did not see, that was just sort of one of those moments of going, oh,
yes.
Hold up.
Yes, it happens often, and that's one of the things that I like about talking about my work and talking to other people or inviting people to my studio. People talk and see in their own perspective from their own history, or, you know, which is wonderful, because basically the work is not one thing, you know, and sometimes people point to aspects of the work that, oh, I didn't think about it, that's great, you know, and sometimes that leads to another thing, you know, and it doesn't matter who is coming, you know, you don't need to have a visit of somebody who is, you know, an amazing critic or curator, which is great when you have it, but sometimes just, you know, whoever cross and has enough interest to see the work and talk about it, and you get interesting feedback and perspectives that you were not able to give yourself, you know. Yeah, I remember one time I had an exhibition at the Museum Art Gallery, and I had a group of students coming, and occurred to me, the work was more photographic in a way that the work that I'm doing now. It was more referential to landscape and photography, not pure photography, but there was abstraction and combination of different elements. So it was open for interpretation, so to speak. So I tried to engage the kids, young, like not so young kids, middle age, and I asked them to go to one of the pieces, just to sit beside one of the works, that for whatever reason. So they did. So one chose that, one chose that. So they were just, okay, now tell me why you chose that. I mean, it was not a directive question, not because they like it, not because they didn't like it, you know, why you chose that. And it was interesting. Some of the answers were amazing. And one of the answers was, like, oh, this reminds me my hometown in Scotland. Was a young kid, but he was born in Scotland and came to Canada. And he was talking of the landscape of his hometown. And I was amazed, right? I haven't been in Scotland, but it was so moving, the way he connected to that landscape. And there was something similar in the energy of for me to relate to the work. But certainly his reading was unique and is like wonderful, like absolutely love that, right? Yeah.
But you must find that in your travels too, where you realize like you're somewhere completely different, but then there's always these things that go, this is so familiar, and it's the human condition, it's how people interact with each other, it's aspects of the night sky, whatever the case may be, that's similar throughout all of those different places.
Yes, I think part of the observations when I'm traveling and that, and part of the work that I do is a bit, when I do photography, is to try to find those connections. And those connections often are connections of our nature, you know. And for some reason I use nature itself as an element for exploration, but it's not for granted. It's because I think we are really part of nature, and we are nature. We forget we are that, you know. But in a way, the way we organize, the way we are together, and we are individual, the way the microcosmos, our societies, us as individuals, or in a larger scale, things function. There are so many similarities in my mind, you know. We are, we have a visual aspect of our existence, or tangible aspect of our existence, and there's so much invisible, but invisible that we know, you know. Often you see in my work these elements that are almost like spread out, but there's a cohesiveness that seems that the elements are linked between, you know. But what links the elements is not visible, it's just the negative space. And I think about our condition as humans like that, you know, as a society, or it's almost like there's always a mystery in our existence, you know, in nature and in people as well, right? And then we share it. You know, we all share this moment, this passing in life, you know, and I think we are all in a mystery as well, right? We are all rooted by nature. At the same time, we're all in a big mystery, right? So yeah, it's I think the different places I've been teach me more about how not to be fixed of one way to see things only, if I can help it.
And you've exhibited in different countries, and so do you find that there's a different response to the work, or is it those universals that come through?
No, I think there's different responses. For sure, there are cultural ways to respond. There are cultural ways to respond, but at the same time, there's something that just people can't connect to the work. My work is not literally directed to a specific reading, you know. So I think people everywhere can be sensible to color, to form, to, you know. I've exhibited in India and Canada and Mexico. In India, it's quite interesting. The way people express their emotions or their curiosity is much more evident than in Canada, for example. You know, and people would ask you and see more directly. It's just cultural, you know. But
us Canadians are too apologetic and quiet.
And also depends. Well, it's probably it's less a little bit more polite. But also depends on the setting, right? Depends on the setting where your work is, you know. Sometimes, I mean, I have the fortune to exhibit in, you know, galleries, but also in settings that are not art settings, so to speak. Recently at Apophony Press here in Saskatoon, you know, a space Rebecca Lamar has opened, which is a garage that is a loft, so to speak. It's her house, and that becomes a gallery at times. And the interactions with people are so different, So the work has its own life as a person, depending where you are to, you know, or how it's set, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So can we just jump up to one of the, I mean, we've had these beautiful images floating behind us this whole time of your work, but can we just pick a piece and maybe have you talk through a little bit about process or ideas? Is there one in particular you might want to?
Well, there are several that I would like to talk, not precisely that one.
Not this one, Jessie. It was like a pop
So
quiz. You just have to deal
choose.
with what's up there.
Yeah. This is, well, okay. Here I'm talking, if you go one back, just to talk about this one. This piece, this is a recent exploration. I've been working along the Saskatchewan River. I have a lot of my explorations along the Saskatchewan River. I started doing explorations in India about bodies of water, and I made a series. The circles that you see, the first ones, those are ponds, and those are explorations about the relationship between the natural environment and the architecture in a specific place, Kochi, in India. And then I came to Canada, thinking the body of water that crosses the province, crosses a few provinces, is the Saskatchewan River. So I thought, this is the source of life. This was the highway. This is the most alive thing, almost, right? Like Saskatchewan is known by its amazing skies, you know, but this river is quite amazing. So I've been working through explorations of the landscape and elements of the Saskatchewan River and this is part of those explorations, is a project called Ask the River. So I did a short residency, well, a month residency, not so short, at BAM, Saskatoon, the Bridges Art Movement, which is this artist-run space where they provide you of the space and you do whatever you want. So I use it to explore the installing of this work. I printed this work in a very thin paper. It's rice paper. The images are photographic images that are collaged and printed digitally. And then I installed this work in the space, kind of suspended and held by these stones. And there was a fan that was moving that piece. So it's a little bit of inspired by the ephemeral aspect of nature, the fragility that I see in the ecosystems along the Saskatchewan River, but also the strength and its beauty and how nature holds itself. So this is one of the things that I, had in my mind. So yeah, that's one. Yeah.
Was it a jump to go from like the photography and stuff to when you're dealing with installation? It's very different, and it's also different in the sense of what spaces you can show it in, and like your relationship with certain galleries. A more commercial gallery is not necessarily going to be able to market this type of thing. I kind of have some questions about the gallery sort of stuff, and I know like your gallerist is just over the wall here and they can hear us, but I do want us to be a little bit open and honest about this, about like gallery expectations too. Yeah. I'm curious about that. Like, how do you work as an artist within the pressure of all of those systems that exist? What your audience expects of you, what your gallery does, what your funders do. You write a grant, and then at the end of your grant cycle, the work is either what you said it was going to be or it's something totally different, and resolving those sorts of things. How much space do you allow all of those other people in your head when you're making the work, and how much are you accountable to them versus
Yes.
accountable to yourself?
Yes, that's a great question because it's true. We have to deal with so many factors for every stage of the work or of the, or other aspects of the practice. I find, like, let's go back for my gallery. To be realistic, like for me to display this at Slate Gallery and for sale is a tough call, right? The space that is needed for it, you know, and the type of you know, a collector that would be interested, you know, versus something that is more you know, framework that is on a wall, you know. So there's a realistic aspect of that, you know. I still pursue my interest and produce the work and explore it and produce the work. And I think that for me it's essential. I don't have a restraint of not doing it or not exploring it, and I don't want to put it in myself, you know. On the other hand, I have to say my relationship with the gallery is really, in terms of demands, is absolutely none. Is absolutely none. I do exactly what I feel doing. And I'm saying I'm realistic because I'm not going to bring this work, for example, but and I try to do something that works, you know, for what it is, but I don't have a limitation or expectations. Oh, you should do more pink of this, or we need more pieces of that, you know. I never had that conversation at all, you know, and I don't think there would be any room for it, you know. So in that sense, I don't have that experience. Yeah, and you were mentioning another thing, you know, grants. Probably that's one of the parts that are more difficult for me. When I have an idea, which is still evolving in my head, and then I have to put it in terms and words, or in a form that is, you know, you're talking about your practice and the merit and what you're doing different this time. What are the risks you're taking? So translating all those things that are very almost ethereal and still taking a shape in my mind to express them. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of work. that's hard work.
It's painful because as artists we're visual, and so everything we're trying to, if we could communicate it in words, we would. We
Yes.
can't.
Yes.
So this is why all of this exists, but then we are really forced to put everything in words at different points.
Yes.
For curators, writers, grants and stuff.
Yes, yes, and in that sense, I do appreciate very much those who write. You know, those who write and those curators who write an essay or a review, or somebody who writes. You know, I appreciate very much that, and I think we need more of that in honestly in the community, because often we have to write about ourselves, and we don't have really the distance, sometimes nor the skills, right? Mm-hmm. After the grants are submitted, and if they're successful and you have a project that is funded, sometimes the work doesn't go in that direction. Sometimes the project doesn't exactly follow every step, and I think there is an understanding of that. At least it's been my experience that I have room to move in different ways. You know, I have room to explore different things without putting too much of a nail that's where it has to go, you know. So, if it really goes to sideways or to different, then well, there's also the opportunity to talk to the administrators of the organizations and discuss that, which I think it's you know, it's I have learned that, let's say, for example, if you talk about the Saskatchewan Arts Board, everybody's an artist there, you know, everybody will understand what you're talking about, much more than we think sometimes, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the more honest we are with those organizations, the more that they will bend to the way artists need.
Exactly, right? They will, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't know where we're at in terms of time. About 5 more minutes. Okay, I have a couple, I'm gonna squeeze in a couple more questions. One I wanna ask you about, though, is a little bit about like the school of hard knocks that we all kind of go through in our careers, mm-hmm. and some of the hard lessons that we learn. And I'm wondering if you've got any of those that you could share.
Hard lessons.
I mean, you don't have to make yourself super vulnerable about a horrible experience, but just things that you know, maybe a younger, more emerging artist could learn from, those things that we don't talk about.
Yes, I think one was when I was starting my art career. I was, as I said, I was coming from a graphic design, career. I was a graphic designer for more than 10 years. I was doing photography because when I started my undergrad, I started taking photographs as part of my curriculum. And so I really love photography, and then through some of the profs, we started visiting artists, photographers, and that's when things were like, for me, like, oh my God, these people, and I love this, what is possible through photography, which led me to do my photographic explorations. Yet, I finished my career and I work as a graphic designer. I had a small graphic design bureau. I was doing photography and the graphic design and production of, brochures and whatnot. But I was between waters, basically, right? I was here, I was there. Yes, okay, the safety of having this trade and having clients, whatever. And that was one time, one of the persons who inspired me a lot is another friend, artist friend, who was ahead in her career, a bit younger, but ahead in her career. And she was already exhibiting and going to residencies and that, and we were having workshops together and so on. Mm-hmm. And at some point, she just called it out. She just said to me, well, talking about me doing it and not doing it because I didn't have enough time and whatnot, and say, well, if you're not going to do it, art, just don't do it. That's okay, right? Mm-hmm. And I was shocked. I was shocked. It's like, yeah, like you have to do it or not doing it, but kind of doing it, sometimes not, and if you don't want to do it, don't do it. That's okay. Mm-hmm. And it really puts me on the spot, really. I appreciate her sincerity, but she was really on the spot, because then I imagined myself, I won't do this anymore, and it just felt horrible, and I just, okay. And she taught me that, she taught me, okay, you're going to do it, go for it, and do it, Yeah. And that made a lot of changes, including me quitting graphic design, those realizations, Yeah. were like, okay, you have to decide, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but just for fun, as a final question, just for fun, if you woke up tomorrow and couldn't be an artist, what would you be?
I think I could be an artist.
Cheating. Well, we'll end on that lovely note of you cheating on a question, but, won't hold that against you. This has been so lovely and so insightful. It's such a blessing to get to sit and listen to you talk. I could listen to you for ages. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your beautiful work with us and all of your incredible thoughts and your career. It's just been... We've known each other probably close to 20 years off and on of when we started seeing each other within the community, and it's just been such an amazing journey to follow you in your practice.
Thank you,
Carole. Yeah, you're very inspiring.
Thank you so much. I knew it was going to be very pleasurable to talk to you. I appreciate very,
there was
very
no
much.
Hard questions.
Yes.
But I'd love to turn it over to everybody else who's here. We definitely have time for questions. And as you can tell, she's open to some, it's those moments too. I think people sometimes get scared to say things to artists, and it's truly those moments when somebody calls you out and goes, oh, but, this or that, right? And just forces you to say that. So I would encourage you all to just actually ask the questions and not be afraid. Yeah. And there's a mic for you.
For those performing, oh, come please.
Can you hear me if I just yell? Is that okay? How has language impacted your art all around the world? I'm guessing
That's an interesting question. I never thought about it. Um, I remember one of the, a day I was in the south of India, in the province of Tamil Nadu, and it's a very difficult language. They couldn't understand any word I would say in Spanish or English. I couldn't understand any word in Tamil. So I started pretending I was mute. So I was so tired. So just started so I went to the market and I just pointed to things and how much, and they did like this, and so we understood each other, and bought whatever I wanted to buy. So I think it's interesting. Your question is interesting. It makes me think about that, how we find ways to translate. And I think language is a big barrier often, when you're traveling or when you're trying to express your ideas in a different language. When I'm talking about grants, for example, I could make it would be easier if it was in Spanish, of course, right? My first language, basically. But at the same time, I think having the ability to learn different languages and to bridge, if you don't have the language to bridge, even if it's science, allows you to think differently. It's almost like it activates a different part of your brain and your person. So I think it's quite a gift, to have those challenges and to be able to communicate in different languages. Emotionally, you express differently in different languages. So yeah, I think that's a really nice thing to think about as a bridge. Yes. Thank you. There are some performance artists here. They can take the mic, please.
We could threaten that we'll just get up and start dancing, right?
Exactly.
We had talked about that, so.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit, just before we close then, about some of the stuff that you've got coming up that folks could look forward to seeing, shows or projects and stuff?
Yes. Well, I can tell you a little bit what is coming up. I have a project. I have a project I've been working on, which is an exhibition at the Museum and Art Gallery. It's a solo exhibition. Beginning of the year, I think it's end of February opens. So that's a highlight for me. The gallery is wonderful. I lived in Murcia for a number of years, so I'm part of that community, so to speak. And the gallery is an amazing place. It's a beautiful large gallery, so I'm really looking forward to that. And I also doing work in relation to my ancestry. In some of the images you saw blue images. These blue images are a work called On the Skin of My Father. The surface is macro images of the skin of my dad, and they're printed in a negative. Instead of positive, they're negative and printed on fabric, and those panels are suspended with wires and rods. The piece now belongs to the permanent collection of the Mackenzie Arts Board. And it was exhibited last year, between last year and this year. And a follow-up of that project, I'm going to go to Mexico and make an exploration on different places where my father lived, and some of his narrations at the end of his life happened there. So I'm going to take a little bit of that material to make an artist's book. So it will be a journey of going back to my roots, going back to places where I left something and pick them up for a different stage and bring them in this object, which is a transient geography, transient territory that I am I don't know how it's going to be, but it's going to be. Yeah.
It's going to be amazing. That sounds like such an incredibly powerful project and such a personal project. Just promise me you'll go back and get that orange ice cream again.
I will.
Okay, wonderful. If there's no other questions, then I guess we'll wrap that up. Thank you all for joining us today, whether here in person or online, and for anybody who does end up watching this at another point in time. Gracia,
Thank you
it's an
so
honor.
much. Thank you so much, Carol.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody. Thanks.
Thanks. Just want to offer a closing remark. Huge thank you to you, Gabriela, for sharing these insights into your practice. I think they opened up ways of seeing your art and also ways to think about like any art that we may encounter. So I really appreciate everything that you've shared. Thank you.
So much. Thank you so much for inviting me.
And thank you, Carol, for drawing it all out. Wonderful questions and points of inquiry. I really appreciate this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess.
We have another panel session coming up later today at 6 o'clock tonight. Yours truly and Sandra Fraser will be looking at 10 artworks that are part of the Art Now event this year. We'll be analyzing them, talking about ideas of having art in the home and of living with art. So check that out, 6 o'clock tonight. And we've also got a whole slate of artist talks and panel sessions for the rest of today, Saturday, and Sunday. Thanks so much, everyone, for being here. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It went well.
I totally have this. Okay, so